All right, second session. We're dealing here with, Peter is dealing here with, the background is, there's these rising false teachers in the church age that are very corrupt, attacking the plan of God, discounting the literal grammatical approach to the scripture. All the different things they're incorporated, and a bunch of them in the name of Christianity. Some of them know they're just, others. But that this continues through this dispensation. Of course, as these individuals die, whether they're believers or unbelievers, they're going to be dealt with. And so he uses illustrations from biblical history to illustrate that God takes these people down. He gives people a chance to pull their horns in, but short of that, they're taken out. So the first example was angels that left their first estate and involved in this conspiracy to corrupt the humanity of the line of Christ, thus negating the whole idea of a true human, 100%. Christ died for humans, and he must be pure, true humanity, and of course he was, even though he came on the scene under the conditions we know. So these angels that did this, I'm assuming, they got taken out of circulation at the time of the flood and placed in chains of darkness in the underworld of Tartarus. And these are the only angels that are in, quote, hell. They've been out of circulation. They're not free to run amok and do their thing like the rest of the fallen angels are. They have been locked down because they violated a rule, a primary rule, that angels, though they have the capacity, as mind-boggling as this is, though they have the capacity to materialize themselves as humans. Otherwise, how could you entertain an angel unaware? It had to be another human. If that happened to you. I think it happened to me once. Could have been more times. But I don't go around looking for it. But if I did, I wouldn't get it because it'd be unawares. Even if I went past the event and thought, that was a little strange. And that, by the way, that verse is dealing with be ready to show hospitality. In season, out of season. Jump on it. Because you might entertain an angel unaware. And hospitality doesn't mean some big elaborate event. It can mean just something real simple. That you showed hospitality or kindness towards somebody. Anyway, the angels are taken out. They're in bonds of darkness. By the way, they're going to get released for 5 months. See, all I do is connect the dots. All the dummies out there think Satan and his angels are in hell are just stupid. Satan's never been to hell. He'll get to go there at the second advent, when all fallen angels are bumped from the earth. And when he comes down to hell, he isn't going to receive a warm greeting. They're going to say, oh, it's you who weakened the nations. And all of his victims are down there. You did it. So he won't be a hero in hell. He'll be bad-mouthed. And he'll be there for 1,000 years, released briefly for the Gog and Magog event, and then slammed into the lake of fire. But these other angels come out for 5 months and torment people. You can read about it in Revelation. They don't come out as attractive males this time. They come out as something out of a horror movie. And they torment men and torture them for 5 months. And men can't find death. They can't kill themselves because they've got the proverbial monkey on their back. And if they pick up a gun or anything to kill themselves, they'll slap it out of their hand. Their sting is like a sting of a scorpion. Well, I've never been stung by a scorpion. But anyway, I'll take their word for it. And they're going to torment men for 5 months. That's in the second half I think it's one of the 7 woes. See, there's a 7th trumpet, and it is broken down into 2 categories. 7 woe. The last trumpet is 7 woes, and it's one of the woes, I think. You can look it up for me. I'll look it up. That's my job. And the other one is 7 final trumpets. Bam, 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 bam. And all of them are judgments, all the way through. Now, what we're building up to here is, if God took these civilizations, the whole world, the lost city of Atlantis, sitting down on, they say they found it. I don't know. It's pretty odd it's on the bottom of the ocean. If God took all them out for their behavior, the key thing before the flood, the key sin, there's always a marquee sin. There's all this other stuff that's fallout from it, was violence. The glorification of violence. That took out all the human race except for the 8 souls that got on the ark, Moses' ark. They escaped. They were believers, and they got on the ark. The ark's a picture of all around, all this judgment's occurring. Inside, you're as safe as a clam. You're fine. And they had to ride that out on those waves for all that time before it settled. But that whole civilization, that's how far they pushed the essence of God, to wipe out everybody. Everybody. In the universal flood. And for 120 years, they got a heads up. They could have made a better choice. And come over and help Noah and his sons work on that ark and then get on it. But nobody did. They had a god-awful movie they put out about Noah recent times. It sucks. It's beyond recognizable biblically. What do you expect? Anyway, so here we are. We're getting a historical record of a civilization taken out. Our second example is Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, their marquee sin wasn't violence, although there was violence. It was homosexuality. Rampant. We'll get to that. As unedifying as it is, we have to deal with it because it is those cities. Here's the verse. Verse 6 here. 2:6. And if you condemn the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to destruction by reducing them to ashes, having made them an example to those who would live ungodly lives thereafter. That sits out there. The Dead Sea. There's big hotels along the west side of it. You go the other side, you're in, quote, quote, Jordan. But on the other side, there's a big white hotel goes up there, and people come there and take these therapeutic baths in the minerals that's in there. I jumped in the water, floated like a log, like a piece of wood. You couldn't go under. You couldn't put your feet down. It float. There was so much salt in it. You better not have a sunburn or a cut on you. And then the mud baths are there. Cleopatra, way back in the day, would come up there for these so they have all these spas and all these things there. Now, they built it all up with these hotels all up and down the side of it. Once you get over the smell of sulfur, once your sensory smelling thing is overloaded, you don't notice it anymore. Now, God left that as an example. That's an out-in-your-face, open example, and I cited you the unusual nature of what's there. That these cities were reduced to ashes. The heat from these sulfur balls on all of them was so intense. And archaeologists have gone in there. And there's shadows various things are strange. This was, again, a super fertile valley. At the time of their destruction, we're at the bottom of page 8. At the time of their destruction, these towns, cities, were located in one of the most fertile and prosperous river valleys on earth. And I was recounting the story. You got to understand people around you and yourself, you got to understand the history of these believers. Abraham gets out of the will of God, takes his entire organization to Egypt. I like to illustrate the failure of believers, good believers, so some of you aren't so discouraged. Good believers. Not to encourage you to do the wrong thing, but to tell you about a great believer. Who is the pattern of the three adjustments for God for believers today? Abraham. He is our godfather. He is our example. He got himself in the geographical will of God. Well, first he got saved. Then he got himself in the geographical will of God. Then he made this big faith move up to, I'll show you the country. I got a country for you and your descendants, and I'm going to make you great. I'll show it to you. He didn't say, oh, I just can't go until I know where it's at. Shut up. He didn't say that. He didn't do that. He walked out by faith and wound up in the land. When he got here after 5 years, God spoke to him for the second time. You're here. You can read it in Genesis. So he's in the will of God, right? He's been given a promise. He knows he can draw all the conclusions. He's going to have descendants. That means him and Sarah's got to have at least one male. At least one. Nothing happens. She never gets pregnant. On and on. All through their youth, all up the line. Everybody else around them get them pregnant. All the people in our organization have little kiddos running around. Not them. So what are you supposed to think? You're supposed to think God is testing me, 1. God isn't going to drop the ball, 2. Make me all these promises, because he had other ways of encouraging him and showing him that he was with him. He goes to Egypt out of the will of God. Now here's the thing. If God told you to walk around up and down the land, explore it, you know, because you're a resident alien, and it's like open range. You don't have, there's not big cities, so you can run your cattle around, go here, now here, go up one end to the other, just at your will. Go wherever you think you want to. Run your cattle business. So what are you thinking? You're thinking, this is where God wants me to spend the rest of my life. I won't own an acre of this land in this life, but I and my descendants will own it forever. God's going to work this out. Now, those of you who know the biblical story know how the Jews finally got access to the land under Joshua. After their sojourn in Egypt. Abraham does a sojourn in Egypt. He's out of the will of God. He knows that he is going to generate offspring. Oh, well, maybe he thought, maybe it isn't Sarah, maybe it's somebody else, I don't know. But he gets out of the will of God, and then he goes down there and lies about who Sarah is. Why would you lie? Fear. The Pharaoh's going to kill you. Pharaoh's going to kill you? And God's given you these promises of land and descendants? It's called losing your mind momentarily. And in the face of a potential, it turns out it wasn't even an actual real threat. Because he'd made an agreement with Sarah that whenever you come before some of these kind of kings, you say, you're my sister. So they won't hurt me. That doesn't make him look like an outstanding individual, does it? But that's what he did. But he was outstanding. That's the point. So he's in Egypt. So he comes back up out of Egypt with Lot. And they've got so much more possessions now. I mean, their herds are so big. Pharaoh has deep pockets. Giving them millions ain't going to bother him an instant. and a bunch of livestock and more servants if you'll just go and promise not to come back. Funny thing is, the Jews will come back under Jacob, and away we go. All right, in this regard, they come back up out of Egypt. And there's a problem, because they have so much livestock, they can't stay together as two separate groups. Here's Abraham's livestock, here's Lot's, and they can't be together because there's so many, and so there was conflict between the herdsmen of Lot and the herdsmen of Abraham. They were like in fisticuffs, or worse. And so Abraham, the gentleman, let me get this here, I want to get it right. Okay, I want to get this one right. Oh, I got the wrong chapter. Yeah, this was their possessions were so great in chapter 13 of Genesis. Their possessions were so great that they were not able to remain together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's. Now, the Canaanite and the Perizzite were dwelling there in the land. What's that got to do with this? But I'll think about that for a minute. But right now, I'm not going to think about it. So Abram said to Lot, here's what behind his words, he's applying a doctrine. It's time to separate from my nephew. I mean, separate. Not hate him, but separate from him. No more business as usual between us. He's had all this time, and if Abraham put the pieces together, and if I'm right, that he ratted Abraham out down in Egypt to get money? Because the Pharaoh was going to be doing an investigation as to why everybody in his court was sick, including himself, but not Sarah. With different things, it just struck him, boom. God's protecting Sarah. And I think Lot went in and ratted on him. And so the Pharaoh came out, rebukes Abraham, tells him to get out and don't come back. And out of fear or whatever, he gives him all this additional wealth and livestock and servants. So they get back to the land, and Abram said to Lot, he takes the mission, please let there be no strife between you and me. He's a peacemaker about that. Nor between your herdsmen, my herdsmen and yours, for we are brothers. We're believers. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you go to the left, then I'll go to the right, and vice versa. Lot lifted up his eyes. These are the eyes of the flesh. That's what a lot of people run by. The eyes of what they can see. What they can maybe get their mitts on. He lifted up his eyes and saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So you got to have that music in the background. Like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as you go to Zoar. It rivals all those spots. Fertile as it can be. And Lot sees that. And he covets going down there with his cattle. It's a perfect environment for him. Slouching towards Sodom. Getting geographically closer. He knows, and Abraham knows what's going on in those cities. Rampant homosexuality of a violent type, rape. Oh, they know this. They're not dummies. They're in the land. They have logistics. They hear stuff. All the Canaanites weren't equal, other than they were all pagans. But those people down there, whoa. That city was not safe for a man to walk in and be on the streets at night. So Lot chose for himself. That's the difference between people. Lot chooses for himself, not for God, not for the interests of spiritual things. He chooses for himself. All the valley of the Jordan. How many people I've had leave this church and go, well, I'm going with this career. I'm going to choose this over the pure gold of Bible doctrine. As if God couldn't prosper you here. God prospered Abraham in the geographical will. He prospered, he let Lot prosper, and then he took it all away from him. Because that was his God. He was a believer. Let me emphasize, Lot's a believer. But he is consumed by getting wealthy. Think about it. You get wealthy. Okay, yeah. So what then? More? Like some of these rich millionaires in our country, how to make another billion? And they're in their 80s or something? They've lost their minds. He chose the valley of the Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward, lest they separated from each other. It all came natural. It's time to separate from Lot. So I think Abraham knew this. He knew he would choose that in a minute. He knew Lot. It didn't matter. He knew Lot would go towards Sodom, geographically. Abraham settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled in the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Well, we know he gave up the cattle business. He found more ways to make money. One of the movies or something had that he made a fortune in the salt business. I don't know. But he went in, but what he would do is he'd sit at the city gate and he'd see people come through and see if he could strike up get another business going. That's what he did during the daytime. He had no focus on divine things. He's a believer. He understands that part. That's not what that's what consumes a lot. And then the verse says, now the men of Sodom were wicked exceedingly and sinners against the Lord. They were on steroid sinners. And we know what category they fall into, don't we? All right, on page 9 here. Life was easy and the prosperity level of the average person was high. These cities of the plain had experienced a close call when they were invaded and plundered of wealth and people by a coalition of kings from the east, Genesis 14. You know what I call that? I call it a wake-up call. The kings of the east, those cities were having to pay tribute to them. In other words, it's like gangsters would do. We'll protect your business as long as you give us a fee. Remember the old mob thing? That's the same principle. The kings of the east came in there and said, we'll leave you alone, but we want our yearly tribute. And these cities were very wealthy. Sodom and Gomorrah in particular, they were very prosperous materially. And we have this coalition of kings from the east. Because the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, or their rulers, their names are mentioned here. They decided a year came along, they're not going to send their tribute anymore. To hell with them. So they come to collect. And the land that Abraham's in is invaded by a coalition in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim. They're coming back to get, and they're not coming just to get their annual extortion. They're coming to take the whole place. And they did. They took all the people out. They took all the wealth, everything that was portable and that you could move it. They had carts and everything, and they're moving out. And guess who gets caught up in it? Lot. Lot is going to go into oblivion. Abraham hears about it. And he decides to do a surprise raid at night. While they're all, have a snootful, they're all relaxed and sitting down there, and then to come down on them with all kinds of noise. There's an example of that in the book of Judges, where they went in to an enemy at night and they were breaking pots and stuff, and noise just went crazy. And it's psychological. And once fear sweeps over the whole group and everybody's running everywhere to get out of there, that's what Abraham and his men did. Abraham put everything on the line for his nephew. His reversionistic nephew who would sell him out in a minute. Did he not? And of course, they all fled and left all this wealth and all the people. And the king of Sodom offered Abraham anything he wanted. I'm not taking anything from you. You just pay my men their salary. I won't take a shoe sandal from you. I don't want it. I don't want to be out there that you made me rich. That doesn't look good. I have all I need anyway. Lot would have fell all over himself. Where does Lot go? Thank you, Abraham. I've finally grown up and got my senses right, and you've been true to me. You risk everything for me. I'm getting my act together. No, he goes back to Sodom. Because that's where the money is. When something's your God, you fall like a maniac. You will do everything to get it and get your hands on it. So, the only thing I can conclude, apparently they had reneged on the tribute they were paying to Chedorlaomer and allies. Abraham conducted a nighttime raid that freed the people, including his nephew Lot. This event was warning discipline to the people of these cities. You better pull your horns in and quit this. They didn't. This was warning discipline. Sometimes before God lowers the boom, he gives people a warning discipline. I think I'd better back off. Let's take our break. No, it's not a break, is it? Let's get ready for the Lord's table. Sorry.